Facebook favors the left.
They do, 100%. We work with a lot of liberals. Yeah. I would go in there with a MAGA shirt or a MAGA hat, I'd get my ass beat.
So I saw some discrepancies. I saw some evidence of bias.
You're saying because he's a white male. Oh, it's easier when they're
white men. No one has the white man's back anymore.
we bring the game to it could work on the left side.
I saw more blatant posts against Trump.
But Facebook obviously hates Trump. Yes, 100%. They do.
I saw an alarming number of posts that really focused on conservatives, kind of a double standard.
So I've spent quite a bit of time looking at pictures of hate organizations, Hitler, Nazis, MAGA, Proud Boys, all that stuff all day long.
Our latest Facebook insider, Zachary McElroy, exposed the pervasive anti-conservative bias inside Facebook. Today, another Facebook insider, Ryan Hartwig from Phoenix, Arizona, comes forward and he says the anti-conservative bias is pervasive. Tell us your name and where you worked.
So my name is Ryan Hartwig, and I work as of a couple weeks ago, I worked as a subcontractor for Facebook for Cognizant in Phoenix, Arizona. So I was a content moderator for Facebook, essentially.
And why did you decide to come to Project Veritas?
I thought people deserved to know what was going on. So seeing just such blatant bias from Facebook just really bothered me.
Other than your personal experiences, you felt there was an institutional bias that you say was aggressive in Facebook. Can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, so when I started in March of 2018, I saw more blatant posts against Trump. So I saw an alarming number of posts that really focused on conservatives, kind of a double standard. There's like 6 people who decide the policy for all of Facebook, and they all think the same. They're very like-minded. So, I mean, if you live in San Francisco, you're not going to find a sample population that's diverse in their political viewpoints.
We bring the game to it could work on the left side. Yes. But the left. How? Yeah, how? Freedom of speech is the main one.
So like they're allowing political ads still.
Yes.
So now they can give more exposure to the left versus the right.
100%. Yes.
But Facebook obviously hates Trump.
Yes, 100%. They do.
And then, but yeah, we've been getting a lot of content about it. I had like at least 10 jobs today.
Bunch of shit rednecks threatening civil war if they remove our duly elected president. Trump supporters are crazy ass assholes that every other other rallies come take it.
Yeah, it's true.
And it's like, listen, I'm the government versus the next person.
Yeah.
But you're not gonna catch me rioting over the. It's like impeachment. Like it's a problem. Like it doesn't just happen. Trump called it a coup.
Yeah.
And it's like that should scare you more than anything. Yeah.
Hartwig was not surprised when content moderators at Facebook that he worked with grouped average Joe Trump supporters with terrorists. The next clip was captured by a hidden camera. This is of Steve Agrument, team lead for content review.
I mean, I guess maybe that's part of your job description is looking for red flags, but right?
Sometimes they're redder than others.
One of my projects before now was hate. So I've spent quite a bit of time looking at pictures of hate organizations, Hitler, Nazis, MAGA, Proud Boys, all that stuff all day long.
Does it surprise you that he combines Hitler, Nazis, and MAGA? He's describing hate organizations he's moderating for Facebook. He kind of throws MAGA in there. What is your reaction to that?
So yeah, he groups together hate organizations, Hitler, Nazis, MAGA. So that's kind of how the moderators are conditioned to think. Like, hey, anything that's right-wing, hey, it could possibly be on a hate list. So there's no left-leaning individuals on that list. So the policy is called dangerous individuals and organizations. So in that same list, there's also terrorists.
Or the moderators that were doing this moderation. You mentioned Broward was a Sanders supporter. Mm-hmm. How about the people that were making the choices on whether to take something down or not? What were their politics like?
So I remember one individual named Cassie who sat kind of behind me to one side, and we had a few conversations about politics. And on one occasion, this is during the Iran, a couple of weeks ago, a bounty was placed on Trump's head from Iran. So they offered $80 million to anyone who would kill President Trump. And Cassie was talking about how she would accept that bounty and that it would be, it would be worth it.
She's a content moderator?
Yes.
It's inhumane. It's inhumane, but if it's gonna save the country, why not do it? I feel like $80 million would do a lot of good for the U.S. instead right now. I'm just saying. We should just hand them over. Take the money as a country. That's what I'm saying. If we hand him over, our country would be safe. Just saying.
Yeah, I mean it's a bargain, right?
You're talking about them coming, like them coming here.
I'm just saying, take him. Y'all can keep your 80 million, or you can give it to us and we can put it in our debt. Like, just you're saving the U.S. Like, come on. Yeah, that's it. They just want one person. Why not take one for the team?
Hartwig said there was also an alarming anti-white bias that was being applied to Facebook's content moderating policy. Okay, so we were talking about this LGBTQ slide. Talk to me about what we're looking at here.
It's every summer there's Pride Month. So this first came to my attention in the summer of 2018. So I'd been there for about 4 months. And so Sean Browder came around and he was giving us a policy update.
Who is Sean Browder?
So Sean Browder is the policy and training manager for Cognizant. So he essentially makes decisions for policy for over 1,000 employees, Cognizant employees. So he has some autonomy. Yeah, he came and gave a policy rollout about, hey, this is going to be Pride Month, and he was speaking to a group of mainly Hispanics, because I was on the Spanish team for the first year and a half. But this basically says straight out, hey, we're making the exceptions for our policy to favor the LGBT community. So basically, it's okay to call straight white males filth if in the context of for not supporting the LGBT. So that's the specific context. So it's a carve out. It's a specific exception for the policy, and it allows attacks on one single group of people, straight white males, for not supporting LGBT rights.
Hate speech is allowed if it's, quote, intended to raise awareness for Pride LGBTQ. So hate speech is allowed in some cases, but apparently not others?
Correct. Yeah.
We've heard this kind of anti-white bias in big tech before. Last year, one of our undercover journalists spoke with Leslie Brown, a former HR contractor for Google, who now works as an HR executive for Facebook in San Francisco. She laughed about the anti-white male bias that exists inside big tech.
All stories.
But I mean, they were able to fire him without having to worry about discrimination.
Due diligence, right.
No,
yes, because it's a white man.
Yeah,
white man, so no problem. You can't do it that easily if there are other issues.
Oh, it's easier when they're
white men.
Okay.
Yeah, no protected clause.
No one has the white man's back anymore.
You're saying because he's a white male, there's more
that if
leverage.
he chose to sue the company, that most attorneys would just laugh.
When you started, you felt like something was off. Do you feel you were being targeted for your politics?
Yeah.
Hartwig said that Facebook's anti-conservative, anti-white bias made him a target. Did you know that other employees called you racist from day one?
No. And when I transferred to the North American side, I didn't hear anything about that. I didn't know that people were talking about me behind my back. I'd never really caught wind of it. And so, like, I understand, like, people probably knew I was conservative or Republican. That's very possible.
You weren't completely alone. There were other conservatives who worked with you who also felt out of place. Tell us about some of those people.
So a few of the people I sit with, Jose Moreno and Tyrell Lease, they're both very conservative and they're both military veterans. But they noticed that the content that they were moderating targeted conservatives.
Right.
And there was bias and kind of a groupthink effect happening where you had a lot of liberal people or like-minded people who were actioning a certain way. And yeah, then you also had people who were following the rules.
That's what you said. Facebook favors the left.
They do, 100%.
Let me ask you this. Do you guys feel like Ryan got targeted because he's conservative? He got targeted because he's conservative? He did. Is everybody you work with mostly like you got, or everybody's
No, we work with a lot of liberals. Yeah. 3/4.
So most of the people moderating,
If I would go in there with a MAGA shirt or a MAGA hat, I'd get my ass beat.
Hartwig says the anti-conservative bias in his case went beyond name-calling. He was called in for corrective action by his HR department for what he says was a benign action. So then you post an LA Times article to an internal message board. Tell us about that.
This was around early January. We were having conversations. We were having a conversation about Islam and different religions. And so I shared a link to this article. So this was back in 2015. And in January of that year, there was an attack in France and the Charlie Hebdo cartoonists were murdered. And so there's an attempted attack in April, and the two individuals were from and attended a mosque in Phoenix. So this was, I learned about the event. It was labeled as a freedom of speech rally.
What did the Facebook HR people tell you?
They told me, hey, you violated the acceptable use policy. You violated our rules. So you use it for personal use, but in the document they gave me, which they never retracted, they said that I was advocating violence.
The AUP policy states that you cannot send or use cognizant or client internal systems to send discriminatory, racial.
Was the LA Times one? The Los Angeles Times where it showed had an image of me during a protest in 2015?
Yep.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so, especially those type of articles, whether or not you mention in them or whatever the case is, it can be offensive to other people.
Yeah.
So it's a violation of our AUP. You cannot use our systems to promote certain things like that. You still violated the AUP policy
because I shared a link.
By sharing an article that was discriminatory in nature.
So you said that you went back the second time. You said they backpedaled on something. What was that?
Yeah, so they in the initial corrective action (CA), they said that I violated the AUP and that I was advocating violence, and that the thing that I shared was discriminatory in nature. And I met with them and they said, oh, it's not the fact that it was discriminatory. It wasn't any of that. No. It was the fact that you just used a client device for personal use. So they really just read it, it wasn't anything you shared. It was just the fact that you shared it for personal use.
I see. So they backpedaled, they changed their tune.
Yeah.
So again, you have every right to exercise your First Amendment. We're not taking that away from you. We just ask that you don't do it inside the building on our systems.
So I kind of understand what you're talking about. So I guess, and that I just kind of typed it out just because I wanted to have all the facts in one place. But the fact that it was an LA Times article, or the fact that it was involving an anti-Islam protest or a freedom of speech rally, that you're saying that's kind of beside.
It doesn't even matter. If you sent
taken into consideration.
If you sent.
Gotcha.
I'm trying to think of something else. Invite for a children's event that's happening downtown, it would be still reviewed for AUP because you sent something non-work related using our systems.
Gotcha.
So that's again the bottom line issue is that you used our systems to do non-work related stuff.
You felt you were targeted because you were conservative, but you also felt you were being passed over for jobs and discriminated against for being a white male. Tell us about that.
I think it's quite possible that, so I applied for the policy team twice. There was no question about my fluency in Spanish, and that was part of the job requirement. But as far as being a straight white male or being a white male in the workplace, the policy we saw about straight white males are filth kind of breeds that culture. Hey, we allow attacks on straight white males. Hey, Ryan's a straight white male. I feel like I was perhaps limited in my advancement.
And I think we have some tape of people saying that you were targeted because you're a white male.
He applied for 2 jobs that he should have got.
But he didn't get them? Ryan applied for 2 jobs. He did not get them because he's white and conservative? Or just...
Hartwig wasn't the only person targeted by the conservative bias at Facebook.
I stopped being friends with like Ryan and Raymond because we were all on the same team.
Yeah.
But they bonded over like their support for Trump, and they would always like bring it up, and they would get mad because I would go at it with them.
So Facebook's like favoring the left with the policy.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And people get banned and blocked.
Most people just don't have the, speaking Spanish, cojones.
Yeah, cojones.
Cojones.
Yeah.
To do this. I mean, I'm assuming you had a confidentiality agreement with Facebook's Cognizant, and you basically pretty much strapped a camera to yourself and recorded your training. And in that training, it does say confidential elections 2020.
Yeah.
Are you worried, or are you?
It was very stressful at the time. So the first couple months of recording, my wife didn't know about it. So when I raised it up, it became a stress point for our marriage. Yeah, so I mean, I'd signed the confidentiality agreement with Cognizant, but at that point, I was seeing them interfering on a global level in elections. And then I saw like a blatant exception that just targeted conservatives or favored liberals. And we're deleting, on average, 300 posts, or actioning 300 posts a day. And so if you magnify that by however many content moderators there are on a global scale, that's a lot of stuff that's getting taken down. So that was the tipping point. There was that one final post that just kind of put me over the edge. But then knowing what I knew about how they were giving exceptions for the policy, I knew that it was likely that was happening elsewhere on a global scale.
These brave insiders who felt compelled to come to us with this story worked for a Facebook contractor. At the end of February, Facebook ended the contract with their employer, but the bias that they exposed has not been addressed by Facebook. Stay tuned.